Geothermal potential in Oklahoma does not look like California or Nevada or Oregon. You don't have like very shallow, hot rocks. However, that said, there are opportunities. And of course, there's always ground source geothermal and district heating. That's being done with geothermal heat pumps, et cetera, with the new technologies. But the exciting things that have been our new developments have to do with converting oil and gas wells or oil and gas fields.
Welcome to Geothermal Unleashed, where we will explore the cutting edge of geothermal energy. I'm Elizabeth Cambre from the Vallourec New Energies team, and I'm here to help educate and document geothermal's rise in the global energy transition. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Susan Nash, who is the Director of Innovation, Emerging Science, and Technology, and she is joining me from Oklahoma, and she's with the AAPG. And so welcome, Susan. You're joining me for the second time
Yes.
on Geothermal Unleashed. We actually recorded the very first episode together, and that was with Ken. So that was an exciting first podcast.
That was
So
so great.
yeah, I want to welcome you back. And I want to kick things off by you introducing yourself. Tell us a little
Okay.
bit about your history, your career, and I'm very interested to learn how you got involved in the geothermal space.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. It's such a thrill to be here, and I just totally admire everything that you're doing. And I think you've done a great thing with Geothermal Unleashed, and it just follows on with other things that you've done. So I just see that you as a paragon of leadership. So thank you. At any rate, okay, so big long I've my career has taken a lot of interesting winding paths, so I'll try not to go on to too many of those. But I started out as a petroleum geologist, and I actually started out was in chemical engineering, then I switched over to geology, and I was I liked it. It was interesting because I was very involved in mining as well. So I got interested in like hydrothermal and the idea of like what happens, hydrothermal deposits, et cetera. So I was like very aware of the history of hot fluids in rocks and what happens, especially in Nevada. So that was really fun. But I didn't really get into geothermal as a petroleum geologist. But later, as an international operations analyst, after I diversified and studied economics and worked in graduate studies in economics with a focus on resource and developmental economics, I really had a chance when I was working with Kerr McGee to be in areas where there were geothermal deposits nearby or resources nearby. So it was like my pure curiosity was piqued. But I think that where I really got interested in it and evolved is when I was at the University of Oklahoma. I was the director of continuing education for geoscience and engineering. And we had projects where we would match make and put different technologies and um, different professors in with I would put together projects and proposals, and then we would go and do them. So several of them were with USAID, having to do with resource development. So in Kenya and also in Azerbaijan, it was really interesting to see potential for geothermal. In fact, where I was in one of the projects, I went to on like 10 different projects in Azerbaijan, but one was in northern Azerbaijan in a place called Ilesu, which means literally warm waters. So it was interesting. And then around Baku, they have high geothermal gradients. So there's potential there. But then, okay, fast forward. Um, so I ended up doing other things, got back into the oil industry, and was in the meantime involved in all types of resource development, and was intrigued by what was going on, for example, in the geysers, and basically went on different um, different field trips, etc. And tried to learn a little bit about that. And in the meantime, I had joined the AAPG, and I was starting out as director of education and professional development. And in that role, we had all different kinds of conferences, and one was at Hedberg, and that was at Napa. And so again, focusing on geysers. So AAPG has had an energy minerals division that has traditionally been really involved with geothermal. But the geothermal was more like just subsurface resources. It really didn't overlap with anything having to do with oil and gas until just recently, when people have been really focusing on applying oil and gas technologies to developing geothermal resources, and also for using oil and gas or existing technologies for geothermal characterization. So with that, I've just been just things have snowballed, and I've been involved in many, many different activities through AAPG that have had to do with geothermal, and it's been great.
That's awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about AAPG. I'm really curious if you could summarize for us, like what are you focused on this year in AAPG? And then maybe like how has your role evolved?
Okay, so my role is really exciting because it spans across the organization, and I work with all of our events and also our partner events. And what my role is to bring technical content to the to whatever we do. And so that might be organizing sessions or having different initiatives at, say, OTC or at NAPE or at some of our other partner events. Image is one, and your tech, etc. Or it might have to do with initiatives that I've started, kind of launched, that have grown. So during the pandemic, we tried to build up engagement. We had done a lot of what we called e-symposia and webinars in the past, but then we thought, okay, let's do them in a different way that's more open. And we called it pivoting during the pandemic. Really, really trying to bring in whatever things could be potentially open in the future that people could like pivot into, knowing there's so much change and constant change. So that's one of the things I'm always looking at, is really thinking about what are the tools, what are the things that are enabling people to adapt themselves for the future. So those things range from, say, geothermal, or tools like machine learning. In the past, now it's like machine learning, AI, deep learning, etc. And then things that have to do with new technologies that are crossovers, say from engineering or from other industries, that could help people solve problems. And the idea is being resilient, agile, and maintaining an attitude of opportunity rather than trying to chase something that's already, you feel like it's already leaving.
Okay, can you give an example of a particular project or initiative that you've worked on this year that you are?
Okay, sure. Okay, so one event that's really recent, I've put together something that's in its, like, I don't know, seventh year or something. It's called New Technology Showcase. It started out as U-Pitch, but we didn't want to be just a pitch event. So we've been doing that. We've had some that have been virtual. We've had them at our events like our international conference, ICE, at Your Tech, at Image. But this year, I'm putting together something, a women in technology panel. And so
Oh,
focus on women in technology, and we'll have women in technology focus at Image. And we're really proactively going and finding women in technology and science, and then encouraging them to present their. After we have the panel, it will be like an hour, and then there'll be discussions, and then we'll follow up with 10-minute presentations of technologies. But the thing that we're going to talk about, and I mean, it's kind of interesting to me that we need to have these conversations, but the thing that I find to be fascinating is that there still are differences between the challenges that women face versus men. And it's not just across the board. It's not just a gender thing. It has to do with gender, with like other factors, like your location in different parts of the world, your industry, and also even the technology. So women in certain kinds of technology, like say drilling technology, have a different experience than say women in lab technology.
Yeah, it's fair. That's a very interesting point. Okay, I want to pivot
Okay.
and dive into the conversation. So you're in Oklahoma. I've heard you speak about geothermal in Oklahoma. So I want to talk about this today. So can you give us just a general overview of what geothermal potential looks like in Oklahoma?
Okay. Well, okay. So geothermal potential um, does not in Oklahoma does not look like California or Nevada or Oregon.
Okay.
So you don't have like very shallow, hot rocks. However, that said, there are opportunities, and of course, there's always ground source geothermal and district heating, and that's being done with geothermal heat pumps, et cetera, with new technologies. But the exciting things that have been are new developments have to do with converting oil and gas wells or oil and gas fields, because sometimes it's not effective to re-enter a, a narrow uh, um, borehole that with old well with poor well integrity. So it's better, but that same reservoir still is effective. So so the University of Oklahoma has received Department of Energy uh, contracts and grants to convert oil and gas wells for district heating used in Shawnee and also near the town in the town of Tuttle, which is just southwest of Oklahoma City. Shawnee is just east of Oklahoma City, and those are using water fluids that's coming from zones at about between 6 to 8,000 feet.
Okay.
So they're not it's not possible. The Corporation Commission will not want to do anything that will tamper with a productive zone that's oil and gas productive. So it has to be one that has sufficient permeability, porosity, and drive and temperature, usually above the
Okay.
productive zone.
So are they still hot then?
Yeah, yeah, they are
Okay.
because they aren't as hot as say if the productive zone is at 12,000 feet and you find a zone that's at 10, it won't be as hot as 12, but it'll be hot enough. Now, it
Like
won't
what
be
is,
hot enough generally. You can use it for low temperature electricity generation, and there are people that are talking about going on leases and actually harvesting the produced water um,
yeah.
it and co-producing, and that's permitted, but you can't just drill in and create a new well in an area that where you could interfere.
Okay. So is anyone looking at the co-production from the produced water yet?
Yes, there have been some experiments with that.
Okay.
And I believe that Continental has been looking at that. And
Interesting.
also Devon is taking some of its lessons learned that
Uh-huh.
it and that from because they're a partner with Fervo
Yeah.
in in Nevada or Utah. And so they're very involved in hydro geothermal, although that's obviously higher temperature.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. So geothermal in Oklahoma is going to be more focused on either drilling in existing oil fields, but drilling shallower than the production zones, or co-production generating electricity off of the produced water from
Mhm.
oil and gas well. Okay. Um, that's interesting. So are there a lot of startups that are looking at opportunities in geothermal? Like what does the environment look like? Are there eyes on I didn't mean to say geothermal, I meant to say geothermal in Oklahoma. Are there eyes on this state yet?
Well, I mean, okay, in terms of startups or smaller companies, the they're working in geothermal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's where all their reservoirs are. So Greenfire has operations in Oklahoma City, and they Rob Clemmer works there, and a few other people. And then there's also Baker Hughes. They've been doing a lot of research in their Oklahoma City lab, and that they are but a lot of it has to do with things that have multiple purposes. So, for example, Baker Hughes has their HPHT new drilling so that it's for high pressure, high temperature, focused on the Haynesville. But that same technology can be used in high temperature, high pressure geothermal.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So, I think that's exciting. So, are there other key challenges for entering the geothermal space in Oklahoma?
I think the big challenge usually is proximity to the use case.
Okay.
So, for example, in the case of the Osage Nation using repurposing oil and gas wells for use in a greenhouse, that was a good use case because it would happen to be near the town of Pawhuska, which is the Osage tribal capital, in the middle of a food desert. So it was very good, well situated. Um, and then the same can be said in Tuttle and in Shawnee, they were close to schools. But how often are you going to get something like that? Now, I know that there have been um, people looking at the like produced water from, say, the Hunton dewatering, which is north of Oklahoma City, and it's a zone that produces like I don't know, 10% oil cut, 90% water. It's a massive, massive amounts of water. The idea is, okay, how can we harvest this? And what is it close to? And it's fairly close to big installations at say, Tinker Air Force Base or other places. So that there's potential use if the economics are there to deal with the high TDS of the produced waters.
Okay. All right. So you did mention some universities in collaboration, but I want to ask, for those universities and research institutes that are located in Oklahoma, do they play a big role in trying to advance geothermal? Do they offer geothermal programs? Or is there a lot of research being done?
Oh, absolutely. So at the University of Oklahoma, that's in the petroleum engineering school, and quite frankly, the geothermal endeavors have been what's kept it afloat since the latest downturn, and they have a really robust program. The OSU, um, Mileva Radonjic, just got a grant from DOE for putting graphene propellant on graphene coatings on proppants so they can be used in super hot rock. So she's doing a lot of work. But if you look back to geothermal heat pumps, University of Oklahoma State University was actually the pioneer in that. And they were the very first university to develop geothermal heat pumps. And they have pioneered it. And they worked on the geothermal heat pumps. They developed the coil tubing concept. And then there's a company in Tulsa called Rygan that is also in um, ground source geothermal heat pumps, but they are um, using a composite, harder, higher conductivity uh, tubing, but it's rigid and it's
Okay.
perfect for using use in urban settings. So they use it in Tulsa and Guthrie Green, but in Boston and different places in the Northeast where the universities and churches, et cetera, want to use geothermal. And then finally, to even wrap it up, I mean, there's the geothermal heat pumps themselves. The largest manufacturer of geothermal heat pumps is in Oklahoma City.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, yeah. I think I did know that about the Oklahoma State University being one of the pioneers in offering a geothermal program. Who was it? I think it was Jay Egg who said he attended that, if my memory serves me correctly
Yeah,
from your
yeah.
podcast. I'll have to go back and listen again. Um, okay, that's fabulous. So, looking now at industry trends and innovation, what emerging technologies are you most excited about in geothermal?
Um, I guess a lot of the drilling technologies that will make it possible to actually drill into the especially in enhanced geothermal systems, because that seems like that's the area where we have the most potential, but we really need to have things that are like insulated pipe, superconductive types of other pipes. We need to have things that will stand the test of time in terms of high heat. And above all, I mean, I think we need a new economic model for microgrids.
Yeah.
And because if we have any model, for example, everybody talks data centers, but let's take a step away from data centers for a moment and think about communities that are isolated, that are high growth or they're high growth, and they just cannot keep up with the infrastructure and their electricity or heating and cooling needs. So if we can target those and then talk to the municipalities and have a 30-year plan so that that the time horizon and the payout is more like a utility and not, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, but it can't be looked at in the same way that oil and gas or even mining is looked at. But we look at it as a utility. There's a possibility that municipalities will have bond issues and pay for that and take everything that's produced. And that was a way of securing it and also paying for it at the same time.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's happening in the geothermal space. My next question is it's kind of a broad question, but how do you see the role of geothermal evolving in the broader energy transition? I mean, I know we've seen a lot come about in the geothermal space over the last couple of years with the onset of like the AI arms race, the
Yeah.
behind the meter, now the lithium and geothermal co-production. But from your perspective, how do you see geothermal unfolding over the next couple of years?
I see it as being in a time of testing and evaluating the projects that are being launched now and looking at them to help them evolve and improve. And also when people say geothermal everywhere, uh, thinking about the use cases as well, so that it's not just looking, hey, here's a resource, let's develop it, but develop it in tandem with either the growth of a community for that community's needs or a specific industry, say for example, aquaculture or or where it's direct use or large large greenhouses. This is interesting if you look at, say, Tyler, Texas, sort of the rose capital of the world. Their greenhouses use a tremendous amount of natural gas in the winter. And you wouldn't think so, but they do. And so if that can be if we can substitute
Yeah.
geothermal, that's huge.
Yeah. So it's almost like we need a mapping of just energy use, geothermal, and then all the other
Yes.
value creation that you can get. Um, which I do believe there's some tools. I've seen some folks in the industry who are working on different tools for these to tackle these types of market knowledge that is needed. But I'm going to turn now and ask a very important question. From your perspective, how important is collaboration between oil and gas and the geothermal sectors in Oklahoma?
I think it's a there's a lot of potential for cross-pollination, and I think cooperation is really important for helping people develop additional revenue streams and de-risking their operations. And also, as you pointed out, just like mapping out and planning and thinking in a different way. I think one of the things that's really hurt Oklahoma in terms of oil and gas is infrastructure limitation. And it's amazing how many gas wells go just idle because of a pipeline that say a shale play that comes in and they put in high pressure pipeline, and there's suddenly no need for or no market for the low pressure. So it gets completely supplanted. But if we look at things in a different way, for example, why not figure out a way to use the stranded gas in these small leases with geothermal and think about energy storage or whatever? People think solar. Well, how about natural gas?
Okay, I like it.
Just thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions for you. Are there any local or regional partnerships in Oklahoma that you've seen form that have had any particular impact in the geothermal space?
Well, the big one I can think of is between Devon and Fervo.
Okay.
And that's really had a big impact. And then I would say also between, say, Baker Hughes and Greenfire and some of the other more specialized high temperature. And so it's maybe not for application in Oklahoma, but the research takes place here.
Yeah. Okay. And then my final question for you is what advice would you give to someone that is looking to enter the geothermal industry today?
I would say that first of all, do whatever you can to go to like the Geode website and find out because there's a big repository there of information. So educate yourself on the different types of geothermal and what's going on. And also I would encourage going to Project Innerspace and just downloading the map and browsing around and looking at those valuable resources and start thinking about a problem like how would you tackle it and and just imagine yourself in the role of say a project developer for geothermal what where and then when you're thinking oh well I can't do that I don't know this or that okay if I don't know this that's where you know what to study.
Very good. Well, Susan, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Geothermal Unleashed. I hope today's discussion has sparked new insights and deepened your understanding of the geothermal industry's incredible potential. Until next time, let's keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible and let's continue working together to unleash the full potential of geothermal. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This has been a pleasure.